Welcome to Andy Ari On3. Big day today. One of my favorite people joining us. Clark Brooks from On3 joins us to talk about his top 100 players for the 2025 college football season list. And this is not just, these are players I kind of like because I watched a game or two last week. Clark has been diving deep into the stats, deep into the scheme. He charts every game every week. This is a guy who knows who makes an impact and why they make an impact. And I think some of the names on this list were surprising to me, and I cannot wait to hear Clark break them down and explain. And also, Ari, I think I may need to go back through my way too early top 25 now that I've looked at Clark's list, and he sent me the one that has the whole top 300, and decide what I got wrong.
I'm really excited that Clark is here today because, as you know, my mantra in sports a lot of times is stats are stupid, and then he comes in and is like actually really smart and uses stats in a way that is actually not deceptive. Because I hate
because he doesn't use stupid stats. Let's bring Clark in.
Yeah, get up here, Clark. It's good to see
Let
you.
me get out of here, guys. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, I mean, some stats are stupid. Total tackles are stupid. They don't tell you what's going on the play. You can make a tackle 30 yards downfield, and guess what? The team you're going up against is set up for a scoring opportunity. So, yeah, that means nothing. It means the exact same as a tackle for a loss. So, yeah, some stats are stupid, but I like to put a lot of context in the things I look at. Like Andy touched on, I do like to have a little bit of affinity for the SEC. I chart every offensive snap every single week, and it really does help me put some context to these statistical things. But I would like to think not all stats are that stupid.
There are some people, though, that use stats to show their point when their point is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, numbers can lie. It's a famous saying. I don't disagree. They absolutely can be very disingenuous, particularly in the offseason, as a lot of people are trying to bolster their team's resumes entering this fall.
Well, and also, it's which numbers you use. Like, if someone is spouting total defense at me, I already know I'm shutting down because this is a non-ball knower I'm talking to. So, like, total defense doesn't tell you anything.
Exactly. It's like the tackles example earlier. It does not put the proper context into things. You could be playing a team that likes to milk the clock, and hence you have a lot less opportunities to defend. So naturally, your total volume is going to be a lot less than someone who plays a lot more snaps. So, the total defense stuff, the total compiling, counting stats, very rarely will you see me cite that type of things just because, they can be very disingenuous.
Context is important in life, and I appreciate you being here, Clark, and I appreciate you not disrespecting the math by using them in a disingenuous way. I can't stand it, and a lot of times you see it during like college football playoff discourse of like, these are the numbers, and it's like, well, you're using those four numbers because it happened for everything. It happens in all walks of life. So, and I don't know if that's just a defense mechanism because I'm terrible at math to begin with. But yeah, like I'm seeing a lot of statistics about the economy right now, and I feel like a lot of the statistics about the economy are like lacking proper context. So
to say the least,
yeah. And now
let's break down the economy. No, okay, Clark, we're going to talk about your top 100 list. If you want to read Clark's top 100 list, it is at On3. You've probably seen the top 10 graphic because it was floating around social media all of last week, making people very angry because people on social media don't usually like context. They just like to be mad about the thing they want to be mad about. But yeah, the quarterbacks, like Sam Leavitt is the highest ranked quarterback, and we don't get to him till number 5. Mm-hmm. The next highest ranked quarterback is a guy who's a lightning rod, man named Arch Manning. So why don't we start at quarterback? It's the most important position.
Well, no, Andy, have him explain the. Sorry, I'm not trying to undercut you, but
methodology. Let's go methodology first.
Yes. Methodology. Okay, right. So some positions matter more than others, like you guys hinted on. Some guys are younger than some returners, so they have a lot more value to give their teams and a lot more potential upside to take advantage of because of that. So if you are a very keen eye, you'll notice a lot of true sophomores are littered in our top 7, 5 of our top 7 are true sophomores, dynamos. It's a fantastic class. So we really like the upside compared to some of these other guys returning, like Garrett Nussmeier. Nothing against him. He's probably going to be a first-round pick, but, he's in the middle of the pack there. And a lot of people are saying he's going to be a top 5 pick. So it's just saying some of these young guys, they just play a little bit more impactful positions, and they're younger, and they have a little bit more to offer over a longer period.
So how much they have left in their career arc goes into it.
Yeah.
It's not just how much you feel their impact in a game on Saturday. It's what they are, their impact is on their program for the long term as well.
It's a little bit of column A and B there, Ari. So yeah, it's your total high-end ceiling, what you can give, how impactful you are today, and what are the odds you can reach that. Because we're using some of these statistics I could use, traits that translate, metrics that matter. That's my little mantra that I like to go in, week out, and trying to see that matters. Because obviously you can't teach size. You can't teach speed. That stuff really does matter and really does drive a lot of next-level scouts' decision-making, particularly at the top end of the draft. So like Shamar Stewart this past season, he was a Titan built, but he wasn't necessarily the most efficient, impactful guy on a week in, week out basis, despite his very, very burly build. So
you mean because there was a more impactful guy at the same position on his team named Nick Scorton?
On his team, in his conference,
Landon Jackson,
Andy was reminding me.
Well, I was a Princely guy. Like Princely had one of the best.
Princely made me Ellen. Yep.
Talk about an impactful guy, but he just plays on such a talented defensive line. It was easy, to focus on Walter Nolan or Perkins getting his, impact plays himself as an undersized dynamo. So he's a perfect example. He's only 6'1", 210. So you're talking
about Suntarine Perkins, who is on your list this year coming back.
He's in the top 100, but a lot of people are prepping for the round 1. I'm like, at that size, I'm not so certain no matter how impactful you are. I mean, we kind of had this discussion with Harold Perkins a few years ago. Well, he's a little bit more of an undersized dynamo. Of course, he's going to be moved to another position that hopefully it finally clicks this season where he can be that red hot motor type of force off the edge there as an undersized threat. But yeah, you're trying to use a lot of different data points, how big they are. What does the eye test say? Well, do the eyes meet the metrics, and do those metrics actually matter? Because like I mentioned, is it just raw tackles? Is it just raw compiling stats? Or are they efficient on a per snap basis where you can really bank on depending on who you're playing?
Well, so before we get to the quarterbacks, then I think maybe the easiest way to illustrate this is number 1, because he's probably the easiest in terms of the eye test plus the advanced numbers. Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State wide receiver. There's no one who has watched Jeremiah Smith play who wouldn't say that's the best receiver on the field. That's the best receiver in the country. But Clark, explain exactly why he's an alien.
Well, you don't see that blend of size and speed often. Of course, he's 6'3", 215. A lot of people in our industry, when being very optimistic, are comping him to a baby Terrell Owens, but he's as big as Mike Williams. He's as big as Michael Thomas. He's got 2 inches on A.J. Brown, who is a very burly playmaker at the next level. And he's only 10 pounds lighter than DK Metcalf. And let's remind you, he's from the state of Florida that produces a lot of good athletes. And he's a state champion in the 110 meter and 400 hurdles, proving he's got that burst, he's got that size, he's got that leap. So when you put all that stuff together, let's then go to the stats. He's the only Power 5 returning receiver to have over a 3.0 yards per route run. So that is pure efficiency. How many yards are you getting on a per pass play basis? He's the only guy returning with a 0.3 clip, like I mentioned. So it just screams he's efficient. It screams he's an alien in terms of being a physical specimen and just producing. Because you can look up the counting stats. Spoiler alert, they're very good.
I love when you have the math to break down the same thing of like, yeah, I just watched him play for 1 snap. Like,
but not everybody's that easy. That's the thing. Like,
that's right. That's right.
Because I would say that Dylan Stewart, your number 2, the edge from South Carolina, is kind of the same thing. Like you watch him play a series and you're like, yep, that guy's really good. That guy's going to be a first-round draft pick.
I mean, we're talking about the size thing. So let's just put it this way. Of the top 15 impact edges that I have today in the middle of March, middle of May. Gosh, where's my head? Only 5 of them are at least 6'5". So that's excluding people like Colin Simmons, like Perkins, like we mentioned earlier, R. Mason Thomas, David Bailey. All these guys are being excluded. Not this guy. He's 6'6", 250. He has the third best returning pass rush grade against true pass sets. So that's excluding quick game. It's excluding RPOs. It's looking at the good, nice, meaty, true drop back pass patterns that
Let me translate true pass set for the lay person. So true pass set is like what you'd see in 90s NFL when the quarterback drops back and you see that cup form around him. When the offensive linemen are either in a 2-point stance or they're popping up and then they're shuffling backward, essentially. What you're talking about with quick game or with an RPO is they're going to fire out like they're running a run play to simulate to the defense that they're running a run play. So this is, I know that you're coming. I'm going to do the best I can to stop you from coming using the best techniques I can use to stop you. And they're not very good at stopping him.
No, third best grade of all the returners. It's insane. You like to think of the first game, the Old Dominion game, where, the offense, South Carolina's offense, was not necessarily, let's just say, clicking. And the defense made some plays that really altered that ball game. And, of course, that gave them a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence heading to Kentucky. And it got their season going sideways immediately, wrecking them. I mean, if you go back and watch that game, Brock Vandegrift hardly had any time to operate, and UK basically had to go 5-yard runs, and then that was a wrap because they could not keep up with the explosiveness of South Carolina. But he can alter ball games. Of course, we just watched the Super Bowl, and we saw how a 4-man rush was able to alter that ball game. When you can win with that advantage and having 8 guys in coverage, it makes a quarterback's day hell. So you match that excellent production with the impact rate of 14.7. So an impact rate. Sorry for the metrics that matter, but let's define them real quick. Impact plays. That is a total combination of havoc plays, which are basically all negative things that can go wrong for an offense. So those are pressures, sacks, forced fumbles, tackles for a loss, batted balls, interceptions, stuff like that. And then you add in defensive stops, which are basically a tackle where the offense situationally does not gain an advantage. So these are short yard gains, stopping, preventing, your opponent from getting manageable downs and distances. 14.7 impact play. It's one of the top 30 returning ones. And by volume, he's in the top 30 as well. So he is doing it efficiently. He's doing it by volume. And in terms of total pressures, which is part of that impact calculation, third most of returners, which really does reflect that true pass rush win grade that PFF has for him. So truly impactful. He's got the size. And we're going to have at least 2 more years of him dominating the SEC.
When Clark tells you all the reasons why somebody's ranked in the top 10, will you just put the picture of Dylan Stewart like flexing up again, and I'll give you my formula? Okay.
I mean, look at that. Look at that, man. He has the great aesthetics.
Look at that guy's arms.
His arms are probably longer than my thighs.
And the crazy part of that is probably his junior year, he's playing at 265, 270. In the NFL, he's playing at 265, 270.
Mm-hmm. It's only 250 last year. So, he's going to keep putting on mass to that excellent frame of his.
It's a scary, scary thought. All right, let's talk QBs because you got Sam Leavitt as your highest ranked QB at number 5 overall. You've got Arch as the next highest at 10th, which I think,
Lanorris Sellers.
You mentioned
Lanorris Sellers is there too.
Don't forget it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lanorris Sellers is how could I? Lanorris Sellers is number 8.
Especially
then Arch.
Talking about a Gamecock, Andy. Come on.
And this is another thing. Like I texted you about this. Mm-hmm. I started going through and seeing how many of these guys are on which teams. Like, what are the biggest concentrations of them? I'm probably going to write a column re-examining my post-spring top 25 through this lens because I think I made some mistakes. So, but the reason I have South Carolina as high as I do is because they have players like Dylan Stewart, Lanorris Sellers. But let's talk QBs. Sam Leavitt took Arizona State to the Big 12 title last year, took him to the playoff. They nearly beat Texas in the Peach Bowl. What is it about him that puts him above the other QBs in the country?
Well, I'll cut to the chase. I'm a sucker for quarterbacks who are very accurate downfield. And and homeboy was very accurate downfield. So they're in my impact study where I do it every summer, and it really does help me cut through the clutter and really determine who's a really good passer or who's a really good operator in their scheme. I chart all the top returning quarterbacks against their 6 or 7 hardest opponents from the previous season. Again, we're cutting out the cupcakes. We're not looking at any of the snaps against the poop states that can really skew the statistics and really create some of this deception and, you know, the disingenuousness that we just hate. Ari, you know, we don't like that type of stuff influencing our decisions, especially with the most important position. So in those games against his hardest opponents, which was a top 10 hardest slate, he was one of 2 quarterbacks with an above average downfield accuracy percentage, so a perfectly placed pass beyond 10 yards downfield with an above average makeup targeting those areas of the field. So it's him and Darren Mensah, end of list. They're the only people with that above makeup and downfield accuracy. So when you're breaking that out against his hardest opponents, when you're adding other things that people might like, well, it's kind of in the modern desire of a quarterback to be a little bit of a creator, a scramble threat. Well, he averaged almost 10 yards per scramble on a 69, very nice, success rate in those instances against his hardest opponents. So, and when he erased twice as many sacks as those he's taken, he was the only quarterback in my impact sample to be top 3 in raw accuracy percentage, depth adjusted accuracy percentage, and interceptable pass rate. He avoids mistakes, he offers potency, and he's got some juice with his legs. The only thing against him, he's not 6'4". He's only an average about 6'2". But guess what? Aaron Rodgers was 6'2", and he's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. So Charles Powers, he mocks him to a Bo Nix plus, which, you know, that can create some negative connotations because some people think Bo Nix and get that, you know.
Listen, if you can get Bo Nix last year at Oregon production, nobody's complaining, right?
Bo Nix year 1 in the NFL. He was pretty good last year.
Yes, throwing short and taking what the defense gives him. That was not Sam Leavitt in my eyes. I think he was a little bit, I mean, he was throwing downfield. He's really productive off of play action. Almost a quarter of his, in these impact samples games, were 20 yards or more, and he didn't have a single interceptable pass in that context. And this wasn't just flash play action that you see from some schemes like Colorado, where you're in the shotgun and you're just, you know, keeping your eyes up and doing a little flesh smash. You're turning your back to the defense. You have to locate your guy and drive the ball downfield. He was so good at doing that. It wasn't just you know, that awesome run game that got them to the playoffs. I mean, his arm was.
I was going to ask though, so he's not putting it in Cam Scadaboo's belly on those play actions anymore. Mm-hmm. Does the fact that the defense is not having to worry about Cam Scadaboo as much maybe change things for Sam?
There is some gravity argument, but they are bringing in a very, I think a very notable transfer from Army who could potentially be that, oh gosh, we got to stop this type of guy, particularly if you're an offense that likes to establish it. It's just naturally going to have to be something for the defense to take away from the beginning of the game, you know, and let, you know, Leavitt, I wouldn't necessarily say lean him in as the game goes along, progress him in as the game goes along, because to me, he is that type of guy who can be that tractor driving the bus for this offense and getting them back where they were last year as a top 4 seed.
When we really talk about Sam Leavitt and we show certain Arizona State uniform combinations, I get angry because it's just like, what are we doing? So can I just
put Sparky on the helmet?
Just like, why are we doing that like weird off orange, maroon, gold type blend? Like, what are we doing? Like, it might look nice on like a European car, but it's not your uniform.
Yeah, that shade of red, that purple magenta, it just looks odd, especially when people start to sweat through it. It just gets a really
maroon and gold, guys. Let's not overthink it.
Right,
Andy, I got to cut through it. I mean, we made it 19 minutes into this podcast, and I haven't been able to say his name. I got into a pretty spirited debate online and on this podcast about how we should be viewing Arch Manning. He's played limited, but I think there's a sample size there of some starts in SEC play. What is the actual realistic non-hype view of who he is as a player?
He's got traits that translate. He can layer throws. He's very calm in the pocket. Yes, he did take some sacks last year. I think that's a sign of inexperience, but he's got that downfield accuracy that I crave. He's not throwing the ball in the harm's way. He can make stuff happen with his legs, like all these things you would kind of want with how the quarterback position is going. Unlike his uncles, he's not having to be, anchored in the pocket and just be a pure on-time decision maker. He can create. He can add some potency to an already scary offense with a high ceiling. So I saw JD Pickell, he said yesterday, all he has to be is like, a third slide guy in a group project. You don't really have to ask him that much. I disagree, because Texas had that situation each of the last 2 years and they did not get where they wanted to go with that title. So he actually has that capability to get them to that next echelon with his playmaking, with his accuracy, and, he doesn't just fall to crap when he's pressured.
Yeah. How concerned are you with limited sample size here?
Yeah, that's definitely something to hammer him on. That's one of the reasons I was kind of lower on Connor Wegman this time last year. He didn't play anybody in the top 35 each of his first 2 years at A&M. And while Arch's slate is a little bit more difficult, it's only 90 snaps. And in those 90 snaps, though, Andy, he's top 4 in the SEC in accuracy, turnover-worthy play rate, explosive pass rate, first down touchdown rate. Only one other returner has a better adjusted net passing yards per attempt that takes into sacks and scrambles and throwing the ball under harm's way, so defender breakup rate. So those are the types of things that, it's never good to put the ball near defenders, and he's already good at that. So he's just basically really molded well, and yes, it could all go wrong. Don't question me. We're definitely being optimistic on what he has shown us. But because of how he plays for one of the best play callers in the game, he's going to be surrounded by a lot of good talent. I just think he has the goods. I just really do. Even if his last name was not Manning, I would be really optimistic in what he brought to this offense this upcoming season. Because that really gets lost in the shuffle. If his last name was Manning, half of these people would not be, on their knees.
Well, that's what Ari sent. One of Ari's friends tweeted at him the other day, and it was very funny. And it said basically, if his last name wasn't Manning, he'd still be a 6'4" tank with sprinter speed, surrounded by really good teammates, coached by a really good play caller.
I think that he's hurt by his last name being Manning. That's my take. I'm going to die on that hill. I think that his name was. I not think so. I think that the fact that his last name is Manning makes people angry at the hype, and they are more easily able to discount how good he is, because then they can just brush it off as hype.
I mean, name your example. I mean, of course, Bronny James being the most recent, but there's just a stigma to being a great one's relative son, and he just has that going against him. But I really do think, if his last name's not Manning, he would be right where he would be today in our top 10.
But Bronny James does not have better measurables than LeBron. And I would argue that Arch has better measurables than either uncle at this stage of his career, just because of the running ability that Peyton and Eli didn't have. We don't know yet if he has the processing and the accuracy and all of that. If he does, then we're talking about something pretty special.
Yeah, and of course, that's an intangible thing that we just can't. Someone like me, I just cannot measure. I'm not in those weekly meetings, so I just have to go with what I see on the on-field decision-making, the tape, where he chooses to place passes, how he chooses to place passes. He's not just a one-speed thrower throwing fastballs every single time. Not that doesn't work for some people, but he has a very wide range array of passes to deliver balls, and I'm just super excited to see what he can do this fall.
Because these players are all in the top 10 for the most part are very young.
Yeah.
I think there is a misconception probably from people who are mad at you that you're not also measuring how good he's going to be for Texas this coming year. You're measuring his impact on the program in the following year if he returns and things like that. The age.
Absolutely. What if he comes back? Yeah. What if he comes back and he's the number one overall player? We're well positioned for that to happen, by the way. So he's not going to have to jump 100 spots just because he decides to return. No, we recognize it's a lot with these young guys. We recognize that they're going to be future first round picks. We're not going to mess around, F around and find out. We're just going to go ahead and do it. There's no point waiting because, like, we can just see it, guys. Like, it's a very, very special class, and particularly with all these young guys. You know, we're just now coming out of the COVID era where we had all these 6-year guys hang around. You know, Dylan Gabriel, God bless. He was almost going to pass for more yards than anyone in college football history just because he kept hanging around. So that's not going to be the case anymore moving forward. It's going to be a youth movement, and we're not going to wait for that youth in these rankings.
If you're watching on Twitter right now, it's going to cut off. I'm warning you. But look at the link below the link you're watching. Click that. Join us on YouTube. Get in the chat. That's the fun place. That's where the magic happens. Yell at Clark. Yell at me and Ari. That's what we're here for. So we'll see you on YouTube. Now, Clark, we talked about Arch, what he can do. Couple spots ahead of him, you got Lanorris Sellers, who also more of an athletic freak, bigger sample size, also in the SEC, plays a similar schedule. How do these two compare? Because I think we've talked about these two as, you know, potential Heisman candidates, but how do those two compare?
Well, I think Lanorris Sellers is still a little more prudent of a passer. And what do I mean by that? He is not going to necessarily target a throw unless he is very sure he can complete it. So, yes, that does help his raw accuracy and his downfield stuff shine, his catchability shine, because, you know, he's not making these risky throws because he knows he can complete them. But at the same time, holding the ball an extra beat or so invites pressure, and he took a lot of sacks and he erased a lot of sacks, but he still moved backward quite often. I still believe, if my memory is still not too foggy, that South Carolina was one of the best offenses in the SEC moving backwards last year, and that has been a consistent trait under Shane Beamer, no matter who has been calling plays. So that stuff needs to be rectified. But when you're looking at everything else, yeah, the decision-making is pretty good. Again, he's not throwing the ball into harm's way. He can erase sacks. He can add a lot of juice with his legs. I mean, just think of the Clemson game and that game-winning play. Oh, my gosh. You bottle that game up into an ether. I would sniff that every morning to get out of bed. Boy, that just gets me going. It's just insane. Like, these are things you cannot teach. You can teach him to be a little bit more on-time passer. You can teach him maybe, okay, in this certain leverage situation, maybe place the ball here for a little bit more of a maximal output, what have you. That stuff can be corrected. You cannot teach his high-end athleticism, his strength, and, of course, if he's going to I don't know if he's going to bring back the rec specs, but for the brand, I hope he does, because that's the type of stuff that, like, college football just has this flavor that NFL doesn't. And I just really like that color, that energy, that passion that he can bring from a neutral observer like me for a South Carolina Gamecock. I mean, it's just really special stuff. So I really like all of his physical traits. I think he's in a good position, despite not necessarily being surrounded by the best supporting cast, and that really does help his case for the next level, but maybe not let's just say for South Carolina's chances for making the playoff this year, despite, you know,
I want to bring this QB conversation full circle, because we were talking about Arch Manning in Austin, and we're talking about Lanorris Sellers in Columbia. So let's talk about a guy from Austin who plays in South Carolina, and that's Cade Klubnik, who you are not as big of a believer in as I am. I am Mr. Cade Klubnik bandwagon jumper. I may be driving the Cade Klubnik bandwagon, but you got him down at number 33. So what am I missing here?
For the unobserved 33, that is one spot outside of our impact 5 stars, meaning I don't think he's going to be a first-round quarterback. And while I may have whispered that part, I'm going to scream this one. Second straight impact study. He has had a negative interceptable to explosive pass ratio. That matters. He throws into harm's way a lot. Now, some of that is because of Clemson's offense. It is very short-oriented, slants, spots, short passing game staples. That's going to really invite the defense to play closer to the line of scrimmage and reduce the space your guys have to operate. So when you're constantly doing that, again, he's a 6'2 guy. He's not immune from batted balls that constantly can be intercepted, whether his fault or his own. It's just a side effect to his operation. And while he may have been targeting deep downfield more than the average passer, again, he was not delivering the explosives that you want. And yeah, you can say, yeah, he has good fluidity, he has good mechanics, he throws a catchable ball, he's poised versus pressure. Against his hardest opponents, he only had a 3.7 yards per attempt as a design rusher with a higher negative run rate than explosive run rate. So that's runs over 10 yards downfield. And he took 15 sacks compared to erasing 14. That's just not, that's a no for me, dog.
Hey, they just figured out that he can run. He's erasing more sacks this year. Just wait. Promise.
All right. I mean, the things that he does have, he played one of the hardest samples last year. So, yeah, he wasn't beating up bad defenses. He was tested plenty. And, of course, the main driver why I could be eating a big old slice of wrong pie, if I could say that correctly, was that second half against Texas. That's as impressive as a performance as any passer had last season. If he does that, yeah, he's a top 5 pick. I just have seen a lot more examples of him being disappointing than him being dominant. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting, and the most difficult thing that I think would probably go into what you do is how much do you weigh games later in the season as in relation to the games at the beginning of the year, and do you buy into the fact that somebody can unlock a portion of their game or gain a confidence or do something better longer that carries over into the season that doesn't necessarily weigh as much as maybe their opener because they played a good opener last year?
Absolutely. And of course, like, not every schedule is the same. Some people have a very front-loaded schedule where they get all those hard opponents when it's nice and sunny outside, and they don't have to play them in the muck and vice versa. Well, I would like to say that it's a nice, clear-cut operation there. It's just not every sample is the same, and you kind of have to guesstimate because not every bowl game's the same, especially in this day and age. Some guys are sitting key starters or playing underclassmen, so their overall rating at the end of the season isn't quite reflective of the team they're actually playing. And of course, Cade Klubnik last year, I mean, if you want to talk about someone who did not necessarily end the season well, he threw a lot of stats. He took a lot of sacks. He threw a lot of interceptables in those last 2 games against SEC people who didn't necessarily qualify for his impact study last year. So, yeah, this isn't a perfect science by any means. Someone could have an absolute dud against a really bad defense that, it's just not taken into account because I don't view them as a worthwhile game to study. So, yeah, not everyone's slate is cookie cutter. You can't apply it all the same. So you just have to take in a lot of factors. Okay, did they have a key starter available? What was the weather like? How was the team playing? Was there a key injury? Stuff like that. But yeah, ideally in a perfect world, you would put more weight into those more recent games because they were the most recent thing we've seen. And of course, that's going to be more predictive than something that was,
So the most recent thing that we saw with him, and that's kind of what's driven me, Andy, and I think we're both kind of driving the Klubnik bus this offseason of like, that second half of the Texas game is kind of like the last taste of going into the offseason of like, if that's who he is. I mean, like, I actually think that, I just put Clemson in my national title game. So you're scaring me.
It's Klubnik versus Arch in Ari's national title game. Let's go.
Clemson's loaded, and it doesn't have to be, they don't have to get that far without if he is a little bit of a disappointment. That defensive line, probably one of the best in college football. 2 really good linebackers. The secondary is really set up for success. So Tyler's I bet Tyler's been eating a lot of wrong pie the last couple of years as far as Dabo is concerned. But yeah, Klubnik, if he is that second half version of himself, Clemson's going undefeated. Clemson's probably winning the national title if that happens. If that's the version of him.
They're 20-1, everybody. They're 20-1 to win the national.
21. Hey, if you're as optimistic as Andy and Ari of that second half, smash that sucker today before the odds go down.
Well, mine wasn't necessarily
9.5 over under at most of the books. Like,
hey,
that's an easy over.
Okay, I hate to cut with a wide brush here, paint with a wide brush here, but usually in my offseason impact studies, as I've mentioned, the ACC quarterbacks, they got it so freaking easy, man. I don't think it's really understood. Generally speaking, Klubnik is the exception. How tissue papery consistently the ACC secondaries are. And of course, quarterback play is very correlated to success. You think last year at Pittsburgh, Eli Holstein had terrible accuracy stats, but it didn't matter because he was playing against only 2 top 35 defenses in his 7-game sample. It's easy to beat expectation when that's the case week in and week out. So knowing Klubnik and knowing, I'm kind of being small on him, but let's not forget he's still a top 35 player in college football. It's not like I think he sucks. It's just I just don't like him as much compared to other people. So I think Clemson over 9.5 is a major buy. Even if they have a harder than average ACC slate, they're just super talented. And again, that defensive line, that defense, I mean, no one in the conference is going to have something close to that. And of course, that's going to be one of the best units nationally. I just think that I'm very optimistic in Clemson, even if I'm not, the biggest lover of their quarterback.
Cade Klubnik, by the way, plus 900 to win the Heisman, because like Clark said,
not good enough.
It doesn't matter how much Clark loves him. If he's playing against easy competition, he's going to compile some massive stats. And we all know that the Heisman electorate not known for its deep dives into the advanced stats. So just put that right there.
I mean, it's only plus. It's only like, I think like Arch is
plus 700 for Arch right now.
Yeah, so it's like the discrepancy there because you get the last name boost with him too. Andy, can I ask him about some guys that I thought were lower? Now that we're all kind of on that, or are we still sticking with?
Yeah, no, go for it.
There's one player that I am obsessed with, and there's two players I'm obsessed with, and they're right next to each other in the rankings. D'Angelo Pons, the corner from Indiana, is one of them, but I understand why, because he's small. I don't even need to go down that road. But Cam Coleman, to me, is a freak of nature. And
Auburn receiver Cam Coleman, for those who don't know.
Yeah, Auburn receiver Cam Coleman. And part of the reason why I'm drinking Auburn Kool-Aid right now, I'm obsessed with him, and I kind of feel like this year he's going to come out of the relative obscurity of being an Auburn receiver with terrible quarterback play and like join Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith on the mantle of true sophomore receivers who are going to be awesome. And I was a little bit surprised to see that he was 36th on your list. It's still a pretty good ranking in top 36, but I think he's going to be a stud. I don't know. Am I off on that?
It's just some of the environment you mentioned. I'm not the biggest supporter of Jackson Arnold. He was one of the worst and least desirable quarterback to target beyond 10 yards downfield in the SEC last year. Where does Cam Coleman do a lot of his damage? Along the left sideline, deep downfield.
That's the hardest part. It's just like
there's a chicken egg argument to be had here about Jackson Arnold, though.
Oh my gosh! What if I said even in clean dropbacks without play actions inside the pocket, he was one of the least accurate passers throwing downfield within the SEC?
Did he have any clean?
Yeah,
he did.
He did.
He did. But you also have to recognize he brought on some pressures by not getting rid of the ball fast enough. He was not someone who was a quick decision maker, to say the least. So
I feel like it's like you putting me into the ring with Mike Tyson and saying I didn't get my gloves up fast enough. It's like, what do you want from me?
I don't think it was that extreme. Even though, yes, Oklahoma's offensive line, that is one of the poster childs to be very wary of building your offensive line in the portal through 1-year stopgaps. Be very wary of that. That is a position you really need people to gel and get some time to work together. And obviously, they had injuries. You throw that on top of everything. Oh gosh! But
that was the thing. Like who did he have to throw to with the 5 best receivers hurt most of the season?
Kept getting hurt as well.
That's what I'm curious about when he has Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr. and I wouldn't say Auburn's offensive line is great, but I'd say it's decent, which is better for Auburn, better than what we're used to.
Mm-hmm. It is better, but this is still a very high RPO offense. It is still an offense that, I would not say has the most sophisticated drop back passing game, true passing game, but he is someone who can do damage one-on-one along that side, the left sideline. He's their true X receiver. Yes, he had a pretty there was a sizable drought across his freshman profile, but he really did come on at the end of the year. Shout out Ari. Yeah, more weight at the end of the year. He's trending upward. And that is one of the reasons why I'm high on him. There's a lot of opportunity to move up in this wide receiver rankings. It's just Auburn's offense. I'm not the biggest fan schematically. I'm not the biggest fan of the quarterback, despite his own individual ability to be impactful. Because if he keeps being targeted and the pass is uncatchable, it doesn't matter how impactful it is. It doesn't matter how athletic he is. He's just being undercut by his own team. And unfortunately, that's why I have him a little bit lower and just outside that 5-star range right now.
And then another one. One more, Andy, and then I'll let you go.
Go for it. I got one too.
Ryan Wingo is even 9 spots lower. And he's somebody – I'm going to do a story, and I just realized this by looking at your list, and I'm going to steal your stuff because that's what I do. I'm a leech of 10 players I'm excited to watch that nobody's talking about for whatever reason. And like, I don't know if you think I'm off base on this, but Ryan Wingo is like just in relative obscurity when I actually think he's going to be a badass when he's teamed with Arch this year. Like, I think the Texas is going to win the national title this year. And part of the reason
Ari is the biggest fan of the class of 2024 receivers.
The class of 2024 receivers, I think in 10 years, we'll look back and say that's the most ridiculous class of receivers I've ever seen. And I think part of the reason why is because the greatest receiver, like, I feel like if God himself were to make a receiver for the NFL, he couldn't have done a better job than Jeremiah Smith. Like, you know, like, I don't know. So he's going to carry the load on that. But when you think about like the guys who came up with him.
Yeah. Ryan Williams, Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo. Yeah. But to Ari's point, I do feel like Wingo does not get a lot of discussion, even when we're talking about what Texas brings back.
And I do find that a little curious. I really do. Texas has been in the spotlight. They're getting a lot of buzz. I mean, particularly the offense. It always gets buzz. I mean, even last offseason, they brought in 3 really good transfers in Bond, Bolden, and Golden. Almost the Blazer laser thing, like from Dodgeball, but with their receivers. I mean, it's amazing how they could have pulled that off with their names and that they were all very good, impactful receivers. And Wingo, as a true freshman, sees targets from them. And I just really am a little, I wouldn't say perturbed. I'm not all the way there. I'm not all the way disturbed, but I am a little annoyed why people aren't talking about him more. Yes, he left some plays on the field. I just think that's some inexperienced stuff, but you're talking about his play caller is going to know how to get him open. He's going to have a very accurate passer getting him the ball. He's not necessarily going to have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting where like, okay, we got to take away Wingo the entire game. No, he's going to find his wins. He's going to find his openings because he's going to be flanked by some more other talented pass catchers. Of course, Jack Indries, another impact guy who just came to this spring portal period at tight end. So he's going to take some safety's attention off of him, and direct it towards more middle of the field where he can be a dynamo on the outside of the numbers. But yeah, I'm just as shocked as you all while he's not talked about more because he has all the makings of a playmaker. And again, like a lot of these guys, we have at least 2 more years of them.
So I want to go to the guys who there are no counting stats for, the offensive linemen. Yeah. Your top-rated offensive lineman. Yep.
Sacks allowed.
I guess.
I know. That's not good.
The sacks allowed. It's always the quarterback.
Quarterback stat. Quarterback stat.
Exactly. So
let's just say there's some competitors in the college football space that send out sacks allowed when they do the offensive line stuff. And every time I think to myself, that's a quarterback stat. That's a quarterback stat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't know the blocking scheme. You don't know how the protection got adjusted. You don't know who messed up. You don't know who missed the block.
You didn't know
the quarterback walked into it.
Quinn Ewers held the ball for 5 seconds and tripped his own feet. That's a sack on me? What? I mean, come on. I mean, Kelvin Banks. That happened to Kelvin Banks last year, by the way. That wasn't just a random example.
Poor Kelvin Banks. But he still got picked in the first round.
I don't think
Spencer Fano, Utah right tackle. He is your highest ranked offensive tackle.
Yeah.
I am very high on Utah this year because I like Devin Dampier, but more importantly, I feel like Utah was recruited to win the Pac-12 in the trenches. They now play in an easier league than the Pac-12, but with Pac-12 champion quality trench play. And Spencer Fano is probably the prime example of that.
We talk about a lot of like aliens, archetypes, whatever. You want a right tackle mauler? You got one here, man. He's the top returning PFF run blocker by 3 points. And he's top 10 in clean percentage, so disallowing pressures per pass opportunity among power 4 tackles. He just checks boxes. If he played left tackle, I think there would be a lot more consensus on him being OT1. Of course, we just had a lot of very talented tackles get drafted, so the debate is wide open on who you want to consider as OT1, but talk about an aesthetically pleasing guy. He's a mauler. He just takes guys to the ground. He's a very nice anchor. He's well-rounded. He's got that size. I just think I think he's the more trustable type of option at this point in time. Now, a lot of people want to point to Proctor or Iamaleava, former 5-star tackles playing for prestigious programs, but I just think the way he played last year, ended the season strong, trending up. he's going to be a big part of why Utah is my Big 12 runner-up this season to Arizona State. Now, they very well could run right through Arizona State because of this offensive line, but they're going to be right there into the discussion in a wide open conference. Like, didn't 4 teams have the same over-under, 8.5? Like, it's anyone's conference. So if you're going to bank on any team, lean offensive line.
There are 4 8.5s.
Yeah.
And 5 7.5s in the Big 12.
Wide open. So why not bank on a great offensive line? Very fun guy with the ball in his hands in Devin Dampier. Might not be the best passer or played the hardest opponents last year. So there is some skepticism from my end, but he's going to be behind some behemoths that can open up some space for him to do a lot of damage.
And Spencer Fano, it's interesting because you mentioned, Caden Proctor, who was a blue chip recruit. But Spencer Fano was also a very highly rated recruit. Everybody wanted him. He stayed home and played with his brother. That's his brother was already playing for Utah. So there's a little bit more to it. He's probably a lot of the same raw materials as those other guys in terms of quality. So I am fascinated by this dynamic, like you just said. And I don't know about you, Clark. I'm a good offensive lines travel. I'm high on Notre Dame this year because when you have 2 offensive linemen who started the national championship game who cannot start next year because you're that deep, that's probably good.
And you're very good despite your starting center leaving town. I mean, Pat Coogan's a really good center.
Their starting center got hurt last year.
Oh, but
Pat Coogan replaced him, and now he's back. So,
but yes, but I'm saying as far as a starter last year, Pat Coogan was in our impact,
he's very good.
He finished as a top 15 interior offensive lineman. He's now leaving town, and you're not even sweating it. Nothing. Not even blinking. Who cares? That just. Not a lot of places could deal with that, Andy. That's what I was talking about.
No. Ashton Craig coming back is the reason Pat Coogan had to leave, and then it's so crazy because Anthony Knapp took over at left tackle after Charles Jagasaw got hurt. Jagasaw is obviously healthy now. They also have to figure out where they're going to play Gorby Lambert. And so, Anthony Knapp's probably a guard. That's probably why Rocco Spindler's at Nebraska now. So, it's wild. But I love that. And I want to ask about when we get these numbers of impact players, because I did sort them, your list, by team.
Yes.
And I thought it was interesting because, there's 5 Indiana players in the top 100. There's 6 Florida players in the top 100. There's only 2 Georgia players in the top 100. And that I'm trying to figure out, is that a sign of we've got some teams underrated and overrated? Or with the Georgia players, I'm curious, is it a sign of there's some studs who really haven't got a chance to play yet, so we just don't know?
Yeah, it's a lot more uncertainty with Georgia. They lost a lot of people. Indiana, they are the remnants, of having a very good portal class in their first season. Bringing everybody, a lot of people from James Madison, Elijah Surratt, Mikhail Kamara, and Pons, we mentioned earlier, all came over. They're all going to be top 10 players at their position. So they are really well positioned to have a front-loaded, top-heavy roster. You bring in Fernando Mendoza from Cal, who Nate Tice particularly enjoys this time of season. He's one of these guys. He's one of these 6'4", fluid guys, accurate decision maker, and who plays in a very, let's say, quarterback-friendly scheme where he should be a very risk-averse and set up to maximize what is presented him. So when you have all that things going in your corner, it's really they're a really easy dark horse to overlook because there's a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. Oregon, Ohio State, they're going to drive the bus. Penn State is going to be right there. Nebraska is seeing what they're going to do in Matt Rule's third year. If Minnesota is going to be a little sneaky, can Michigan State get out of that quagmire of mediocrity now that Aiden Childs looks to have some chops as a true pocket passer this past season? So it's going to be harder for them for sure, but in terms of true true impact players at these positions, they just simply have them, and you can't deny them. Even though I might be a little bit higher on their offensive linemen than some others, I just really do like how they have. I mean, look, a corner, receiver, edge rusher, quarterback. These are where these guys play. They're not just all interior offensive linemen or linebackers or positions like that. These are positions that can kill drives, determine ball games, and get you W's, which is what it's all about.
Andy, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but do you have the numbers that you compiled, in front of you? So I would just like to know some of the.
You mean when I resorted Clark's spreadsheet? Yes, I did. When I sorted by school, Alabama has 5. Clemson has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Florida has 6. As I said, Indiana has 5. Ohio State has 3, which I think that Clark, that gets into the question I mentioned about Georgia earlier, because Georgia has 2. Like Georgia and Ohio State, obviously the 2 best recruiting programs in the country over the past 5 years. Mm-hmm. How much of that is there's young guys who were great recruits who we just haven't seen on the field yet?
Hey, I am very much a wait and see type of person when it comes to putting these blue chips into these impact ratings. So again, that should really speak to the volume why I have 5 in the top 7, because they were that good as true freshmen. If a true freshman can come in and be that impactful, I don't have any qualms pushing them up. But until I see it, until I can make a good argument for it, I'm in no hurry. There's a lot of good football players out there that need some recognition. So yeah, you may be a 4-star, you might be in prime position to produce and make a name of yourself, but for an off-season list, come on now. We're all about
a lot more. I'm trying to figure out, should I be worried about whether Georgia's going to be good again this year?
No. I would not sweat it too much, and particularly if it's just the top 100. Again, it's a meritocracy thing. We haven't seen a lot of what Georgia's new pass rush is going to look like, that new D-line. I know we got Christian Miller on there, and he's going to be a very key cog, but what's the rest of the unit going to look like? Is Dalen Everett going to live up to that pedigree he had this time last year? How is that offensive line going to adjust? Ernest Green did not have the smoothest fall last year. Is he gonna rebound and potentially be a second late first round pick with his size and ability to block on the blind side? It all remains to be seen, but based off what we saw this past season, sorry Georgia, only 2. Sorry Ohio State, only 3. You guys just lost so much. I mean, you guys want to put up all those
Ohio State has 2 of the top 3 on the list, so that's probably okay.
I think that's fine, but if you want to complain or if you want to boast about the number of draft picks you have every April, be prepared to maybe not have as many top 100 returners for the upcoming fall every single year.
But Ohio State would have been loaded in this. Ohio State would have been loaded in this last year.
Oh, they were loaded in this last year. They had the most players. I can tell you that off the top of my head. I knew they were. Yeah. I knew they had the most.
And this year, Texas has 7. They have the most.
Oh, what are you trying to say, Andy?
But I said on the show
yesterday. yeah, exactly. All right, before we let you go, Clark, there's one guy we got to talk about on your list, because
is it Arch Manning again?
Well, as much as Arch Manning does numbers, nobody does numbers like this guy. This guy has carried us through the offseason. But a lot of it has been talk about him off the field and talk about the big picture with him, what it all means. I'm less interested in what it all means with Nico Iamaleava than I am with,
can he play?
What does Nico bring to UCLA? Was Tennessee wise to let him walk? What are the numbers and the film study? Because you take a deep dive on quarterbacks every offseason as well. So you've already studied him very closely. What does that tell you about Nico?
Well, it's going to be a nuanced take. Sorry. I know I've been kind of fiery today. This one's going to be a little bit more riding the fence, but I do believe he has a top 10 arm talent. In a vacuum, you give a top 10 arm talent $4 million to play football for you. If Texas Tech is going to give their starting basketball center that much money, I think a starting SEC quarterback with top 10 arm talent merits that. That said, there's a lot of tangential things that worries that kind of sours his output. There's a little bit of concern statistically. Of course, our eyes told us he was not an accurate downfield passer last year. He had the SEC's highest uncatchable pass rate on targets beyond 20 yards downfield, and he targeted downfield more often than the average passer. So that those throws just mattered more to Tennessee's operation. Of course, Tennessee's offense, Andy, we have talked about this a lot. It does not do the best job setting up that quarterback for success down to down or year to year, because it is so post-snap reliant on receivers' choice routes. So you're not really going through a set progression. You're not really going from sideline to sideline or reading your triangle or going high to low. You're basically just saying, okay, hold. Okay, he's got a step, or hold. They hooked up. Let's throw to space. It doesn't ask a whole lot of quarterbacks mentally in my point of view, but of course it does put them in avenues to succeed. So when you're leaning into that aggressive style play and you're leaving plays on the field and you're already slowing his next level, development, I could easily see, if you're in Nico's camp, let's get the heck out of here. Cut our losses and let's find somewhere else to play. UCLA, on the other hand, I don't know. Look, I don't know where his real market was, but going there tells me it probably was not as vast as I anticipated or he anticipated. He is going to have some transfer guys that have some potential to make them an average offense, but I have a hard time believing that this is going to be a above average offense, particularly in the Big Ten. Even though he is going to be a little bit of a gem in terms of arm talent, I don't know, let's just say, in terms of counting stats, where like that will get people's attention. He's throwing for 3,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to have that sexy type of output where people are going to say, oh, that was a good move for both sides. Same time, Tennessee, be careful what you wish for, because Joey Aguilar has been a turnover machine playing against, let's say, less than stellar competition. So while Nico was throwing, air mails, he wasn't throwing them to defenders, and that is the exact opposite of Joey Aguilar.
So what can Nico do better? And look, so I will, this is where I will bring maybe the first nice thing I've said about Nico's camp. They did bring up concerns about the offense. Now, they didn't bring them up when they should have. They brought them up after everybody was mad at them. But
too late.
Could this offense, which is Tino Sunseri coming from Indiana, presumably bringing Indiana's offense, even though he didn't call it last year for Indiana, could that help Nico develop?
Well, again, the veer and shoot, it's a very high scheme in RPOs. Indiana ran a lot of RPOs last year. So in theory, yeah, that aspect, making him a distributor, getting the ball out fast. Like I mentioned, the veer and shoot, when it's running drop back stuff, it's vertical choice type of stuff. It can buffer and lead to mistakes. So I think more true quick game stuff, whether it is slants, whether it is spot, whether it is stick, whether it is these tried and true West Coast staples to truly, make him a point guard and getting the ball out into playmaker space and just matriculate down the field, as Hank Strom used to like to say. I think that could be very well and help his development because, like we mentioned earlier, that cerebral aspect is a very nice, desirable thing, but it's intangible. It's really hard for people on the outside to gauge that type of thing. But if he can master an offense, understand checks and progressions and get the ball out and not and continue to not, log a lot of mistakes, absolutely he can help himself. As far as playmaking and plays outside of structure, I think he absolutely can be better in that regard. Of course, you don't want to lean on backyard ball, but you also don't want to be a complete negative in that aspect as well. So erasing sacks, offering a little bit more potency with his legs, I think will absolutely do him favors. But in terms of the immediate thing, just being a risk-adverse point guard decision maker, an offensive executive, if you will, because there's no better way to, one, get easy completions and get easy yardage, hidden yardage, than just being an RPO facilitator in that aspect.
That was a lot of information, Andy.
That was. But it's good because I feel like the Nico discourse has devolved into just, are you a Tennessee fan and you're mad at him, or are you a person who doesn't like Tennessee and you want to see him succeed because you want Tennessee to feel bad about letting him walk? Like, it's so much more emotional than anything else. But the fact of the matter is he was a fairly controversial quarterback because
even before.
Yes. Yeah. If he were still at Tennessee, I think we'd still be having some similar discussions about, okay, how good is he really? And I think Clark's right. Clark, when we talk about the veer and shoot, is the offense that Tennessee runs. It is based on the old Art Briles Baylor offense. And it like we've yet to see an NFL quarterback come from the veer and shoot. Now, The same thing used to be said about the air raid, and then Pat Mahomes came from the air raid, and now everybody's fine with air raid quarterbacks in the NFL. But this one it's different. It's different. Like, quarterbacks count in the box every play. If it's a light box, it's handing off. If it's a heavy box, you mentioned the choice routes that the receivers are running. Like, it's fairly simplistic. When it works, it really works. But that's the question about Nico is, like, why were the deep balls not catchable? You know, because that was the frustrating thing about watching him at Tennessee, is that there were open receivers that he just missed sometimes. So is that the offense's fault, or is that his fault?
Yeah, it's his fault, but I mean, he is 6'6", so let's not forget that release point is very high. If you're throwing to a 5'10" receiver, like we had this discussion with Will Howard last year when it was kind of like the opposite, where, you know, he's 6'5" and he had 0 receivers, or he had like 1 catch career before going to Ohio State with a guy over 5'11" or something like that, which is like unheard of. But yeah, when you're 6'6" and you're throwing to shorter guys, that can matter, particularly on deep balls. It's like a golf shot. If you're just a fraction off and the further it goes, that fraction keeps exponentially growing. If you just miss 6 inches high and it goes up.
I was told there would be no physics in my football podcasting career.
It's a bad at math podcast. It's certainly a bad at physics podcast.
Well, I'm trying to get the golf example.
Do I need to call Mr. DeSanto from Lake Mary High and have him explain this to me?
Well, I got this whiteboard behind me. So anyway, no, but yeah, I just think it's a little bit of bad circumstance. Some of his physical shortcoming. I mean, I wouldn't say it's shortcoming, but it's just something to deal with. But I think it's just going to have to be something with more reps. Get used to that. Because if I see that again, I'm writing him off and I'm not going to forgive him. You can't be a consistently bad downfield passer in my eyes. I mentioned this at the top. When I talk about Sam Leavitt, immediately got my attention because he was an accurate downfield passer, as did Drake May, as did CJ Stroud, as did Jaden Daniels, and other guys in my previous impact samples that just really thrived in that context. That's how you're going to separate yourself. So if he does what he did last year, yeah, we write him off and we can just do whatever. Just because of the ease of access, the velocity, just you can't teach that type of stuff. I'd like to think that you can maybe hone in that accuracy. We saw Josh Allen in the next level. He used to be one of these alien athlete who was just so inaccurate at college, but figured it out. That's not going to happen for every person. That might be Nico's case. He might be that type of arm talent down the line, but in terms of the short term, just for what UCLA wants, what he wants as a brand, and potentially getting a next big payday, he can't afford to be that inaccurate again. So he better shore that up. He better.
Cannot wait. I'm so excited to see these guys actually play. Like, yeah, I was just thinking about like that the UCLA Utah season opener. Like, what we've talked about today makes me even more excited about that season opener. Clark, I cannot thank you enough. We got to have you back. We got to do some more preseason. We'll drill down on some of these position groups. Like, this is awesome. So Clark, thank you so much.
Andy, Ari, it was a pleasure.
Thanks for being here, bud. Appreciate you.
That is the great Clark Brooks. Those are the 100 most impactful players in college football. Check that story out at on3.com. Look, you should be subscribing to on3.com so that you can get all of that great information. You can read my columns. You can read Ari's columns. Of course, you're signing up through your favorite team site. So you're getting the message board community for your team, whether it's a Tennessee fan on VolQuest, Alabama fan at Bama Online, Kentucky fan at Kentucky Sports Radio. It's unbelievable. Best community in college football. So sign up for On3. We're being good company men, right, Ari?
I think so. You did a pretty good job.
All right. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And we're getting ready to welcome all the Rivals folks July 1st. So a lot of exciting things happening.